Hey guys, in this video I'm going to explain how YouTube ads costs work and how to reduce your costs. Now make sure to smash the subscribe and like button so I can keep making more videos. My name is Shash Singh. I run Linx digital agency, which has managed millions of dollars in YouTube ad spend, and all we do is focus on YouTube advertising. So let's get started. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, one thing I want to cover is kind of the very high-level concept of advertising cost. So Google, which owns YouTube, and Google Ads is the platform that you run YouTube ads through, has one aim, and that's to really make as much money as possible. There are different bidding types, there are different ways you can pay for ads, but Google essentially decides who to give the ad placement to based on who it thinks will provide the most money for that ad placement. So it's really important to understand that the ad platform works like an auction. Now, on Google search, we have something called quality score, which is basically the quality of the ad, and Google will give you cheaper, lower, or higher rates. On YouTube, we don't have any official proof of that, but we do think there is some sort of quality score. We've seen really great ads get lower CPMs, and we've seen that when we push a lot of ads into the platform, the best ones get lower CPMs. However, the reason this is because one thing Google does realize is if an ad provides a great experience for users are going to keep using YouTube. While if everybody hates an ad, they won't keep using it. As I said, there's no solid conclusive proof for it, but I do think that this is true. And the second point is because this is an auction and because Google is going to give the placement to the highest bid, no matter the bidding type, right? Because there are different bidding types, there are different ways for you to pay for ads. Essentially, Google's going to decide based on where it's going to make the most money. What you need to understand is you're competing against other advertisers, right? So a lot of people think that their company or their business exists in a vacuum and that their ads should be profitable just because. In reality, it all comes down to, are you better than the competition or not? Or if you don't have competition, that's even better, right? Because you're competing with people for the same ad spots. Now, you might be competing with people in different industries for the same ad spot or with direct competitors. Now, direct competitors is where you have to be really worried about because they can really drive up the ad cost, while the general industry trends can also affect your ad costs. For example, during Black Friday, your ad costs are going to be super high. January, your ad costs are going to be lower, right? So that affects things. You got to understand that in basically the whole gist of it is like it's an auction and you're competing with other advertisers and you have to be able to be better than them. Now, one important concept to understand is this whole concept that YouTube ad cost doesn't really matter. What matters is how much profit you're able to make per click or per view or basically per person you get to your website. Because you can basically pay 50 cents for a really unqualified click and that's not gonna make any money, you're gonna lose money, or you can pay $4 for a really qualified click and that person's gonna potentially be a much better customer. So we have clients who pay $4 per click and they make ridiculous amounts of profit. And we've seen other scenarios where people who pay 50 cents a click, because they're trying to get the cheapest clicks possible, don't really make any money. So when you hear people bragging about how cheap their CPV is, cost per view, then understand that it's really an irrelevant metric. What really matters is kind of, are you making money or not, right? Like, are you making more money than you spend to get a customer? One thing to keep in mind is when advertisers think about cost, usually they're worried about cost per acquisition. While cost per 1,000 impressions, which is basically a cost to get like 1,000 impressions of your ad, it matters because it's basically a metric that tells you how much competition there is. It tells you how well your ad is doing because better ads get lower CPMs. Usually, it's not a direct metric. The direct metric you want to look at is cost per acquisition, which is basically cost per lead or cost per sale, right? Like, what's the cost to get somebody to maybe opt in for something for your business, or the cost to have them buy your product. That's what's really important. Now, what all this means is that, right, more qualified traffic is usually worth more. So what that leads to is advertisers are willing to bid higher for more qualified traffic. So generally, traffic that's more targeted is just going to be more expensive. Now, this also means that certain industries and niches get higher cost per 1,000 impressions. So for example, if you target a very uncompetitive niche, right, you'll get super cheap views and super cheap clicks. On the other hand, if you're in a space like e-commerce training, so let's say you're teaching people how to make money with Amazon or with Facebook ads or with Shopify, you're gonna basically pay top dollar for the clicks, for the views, etc. And this is also why a small channel in the internet marketing space can often make way more money than a big prank channel. The CPMs are way higher in this niche versus like general comedy or mass niches, right? Because people in this niche, which is, online marketing, they're willing to pay top dollar for training, education, etc. So obviously advertisers are willing to pay top dollar to get those customers because they know those customers are going to spend even more money. If you're a creator and you're wondering why you're getting super low CPMs, it might be the types of videos you're making, right? It might just be your video isn't what advertisers want to advertise on. So you want to kind of think about that, right? Like if you're making videos, think about whether advertisers would actually want to advertise on it or not. And typically, if you're making a video that's actually related to a product or perhaps some sort of service, you're going to get higher CPMs because advertisers will want to advertise on a video that's related to their product, right? So, or to a competitor's product. So for example, if you do a review on a Sony a6500 camera, right? What's gonna happen is you'll probably have other camera manufacturers also advertise on that video, leading to higher CPMs. On the other hand, if you just make general filmmaking principle videos, you'll still get good, ad revenue, but it won't be as high as a specific product review. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're a creator. Now this video is more for advertisers, but I know there will be creators in here who are trying to understand how this all works. So that hopefully will explain a few things. And one thing is that what Google has a ton of different advertising targeting options, right? That allows advertisers to choose what they'll target. So basically advertisers have control over what videos their ads show up on, and they decide to spend more on more qualified traffic, on traffic that's actually watching videos that's related to their product or offer or service. Now let's talk about how Google charges you for specific video formats. So the first common type of video ad format on YouTube is the skippable in-stream ad. These are the ads that show up before a video, and you can basically hit the skip button and be able to skip them after 5 seconds, or if not, you keep watching them. Now this is the ad type that we get the best performance on. There are usually 2 bidding types. So a bidding type is basically how you decide to kind of bid for the ad. So there's maximized conversions, which means that Google will try to get you the most conversions, which could be leads or sales, within your budget. And then there's target CPA, which is Google tries to get you conversions within that target cost per acquisition. So it's like you tell Google, hey, I want to pay $10 for a lead, and Google will try to get you leads at or under $10, right? Those are the 2 main bidding types. Now there's cost per view bidding, where you get charged on people watching 30 seconds of your video or interacting with your video ad. So let's say you bid 10 cents for a cost per view bidding type. Basically what you're telling Google is you're willing to pay 10 cents for somebody to either watch 30 seconds of a video or interact with the ad, which could be clicking on it, clicking a link, etc. So we don't really use CPV bidding much as an advertiser, just because it doesn't work that effectively for us. Now there's other bidding types, right? So there's target CPA, there's maximized conversions, and there's target CPM. So target CPM is target cost per 1,000 impressions. So you're telling Google how much you're gonna pay to be able to be shown to X number of impressions, right? So you're like telling them, hey, I'm willing to pay $10 to be shown to 1,000 people, right? So that's another bidding type. Now with those 3 bidding types, target CPA, maximize conversions, and target CPM, you're getting charged on a cost per 1,000 impressions basis. But it's really important to understand how target CPA and maximize conversions work. So with target CPA, you're basically telling Google what you're willing to pay per conversion. However, if it's an unrealistic goal, Google simply won't spend it because they realize they can get more revenue from other advertisers, right? So basically the way Google does it is it looks at your conversion rate, and then it figures out, okay, how much is the bid that needs to be made on a CPM basis to be able to be shown in front of this video, and it optimizes to basically see if it can get you on that placement while still being your target cost per acquisition, right? So basically it does some complex math, figuring out whether your goal is realistic while also allowing Google to make the most money. Now, obviously, if you want to get $1 per lead and it's just not going to happen at the CPMs that Google charges, then you're not going to get any delivery of the ad, right? Because Google's going to give the space to an advertiser that's willing to be more realistic in their goals, because Google will make more because they realize that, hey, it can get them conversions while also charging them a higher CPM. So that's kind of how that works, right? Basically think of it as a complicated algorithm that tries to make the most money possible from each viewer or each placement or each ad. So to give you an example, let's say you have a daily budget on your campaign for like $200 a day, right? and you have bid for $10 cost per lead. However, Google's only able to deliver $14 cost per leads, right? Because of the fact that your conversion rate is a little lower and basically the CPMs are high, right? Because, if they want to put you in the ad auction, you have to be the best person for that ad. So in that case, what Google will do is probably not spend the full budget of the campaign, right? So that's what happens a lot, right? Where, you have a campaign, you have a daily budget at $200, but your goal is too tight. It's not allowing Google to spend that money while still hitting that goal per acquisition, so Google reduces spend. And the reason for that is basically there's no way for Google to deliver and get you those results at the cost you want without basically Google sacrificing their own money, because there are other advertisers where they have a cost per acquisition goal that's a bit higher, or maybe the conversion rate's a bit higher, so they're able to pay that CPM and get that top auction position and still be able to hit their goals. So Google spends a full budget for them, like the daily budget, right? So basically Google's trying to optimize for most money for itself. And then you get second pickings, right? So let's say theoretically they're just two advertisers, right? Obviously this is unrealistic. So advertiser one, after they spent $500 daily and that's their budget, they can't spend anymore, then Google will start giving the spot to other advertisers who are perhaps bidding less, or perhaps their conversion rates are lower, and basically Google kind of goes down like that, right? So it's really important to understand this. Now for this other bidding type, maximize conversions, Google tries to get as many conversions as it can for the daily budget. However, it will spend the daily budget every single time. So those leads could be expensive. So if you set $500, it will spend $500 and it will try to get as many, conversions as possible. But it's basically you're telling them, hey, spend this $500 trying to get as many as possible, but I don't care about the cost per conversion. While if you have target CPA, you're telling them, hey, this is the cost per conversion I want. It's okay if you don't spend the full budget, right? So those are the main differences between target CPA and maximize conversions. So with both target CPA and maximize conversions, you're basically giving Google data as to what goals you want, and Google will try to get you those goals as long as you are being competitive in the auction, right? So it's basically using an algorithm to figure out, hey, who's going to be most competitive in the auction based on their goals and their conversion rates, and then gives that spot to that advertiser. So really important to understand that. So let's talk about the next ad format, which is the non-skippable in-stream ads. So honestly, I don't recommend this ad format because it typically is just kind of a waste of money. These are 15-second or shorter ads that can't be skipped, and you're charged on a CPM basis. Now, the reason I don't recommend this is those ads are too short to be able to persuade people or give them any information. So really what big companies do is just kind of plaster their branding ads on them, right? However, if you're a smaller company, I would not recommend using these ads. So as I mentioned, these ads are charged on a cost per 1,000 impressions. Basically, you bid the cost per 1,000 impressions you're willing to pay for these ads. Now, the next ad format is the video discovery ad. So you get charged when people decide to watch your ad by clicking the thumbnail. These are the ads that show up in the search results on YouTube, or they show up in the sidebar. You click on them and then you go into a video. With these, you bid on a cost per view basis. As I mentioned, a view with Google is defined as they watch like 30 seconds or they interact with the ad. So with these ads, you're basically bidding for kind of how much you're willing to have somebody click on the ad to watch it, right? Now, we use these video discovery ads once in a while for retargeting or for basically longer form content ads. They're not the best for direct response, but they can be okay to help you with, indoctrinating people, getting them to watch longer videos, and even growing YouTube channels sometimes. Now, the next ad format is the bumper ad. So the bumper ad is basically a 6-second super short ad. I don't recommend this ad format either. It's just like basically one of those ad formats that big brands like to use. It's kind of a waste of money. You don't really have enough time in 6 seconds to really persuade anybody or even demonstrate anything. It's just more like you have a chance to flash a logo and maybe have a quick scene. So it's really not that useful. And you basically pay with a target CPM bidding, and you pay on cost per 1,000 impressions. So you bid how much you want to pay per 1,000 impressions for these ads. Once again, not recommended. Now, another ad format that you can use is the outstream ad format. Now, with this ad format, you're basically have ads that show up in either apps or like third-party websites. These don't show up on YouTube. So these are basically kind of like YouTube ads, but on third-party websites on Google's network. These ads are mobile only. It could be playing on a silent in background, which it usually does. But even if they see it for 2 seconds, you get charged. And you basically get charged on a viewable cost per 1,000 impressions. So basically an impression that's like 2 seconds long is you get charged for that. Now, these aren't on YouTube technically, but I wanted to cover it because it's part of Google's video formats. Now, the last ad format is the masthead ad format. Now, this is a video that will show up on the YouTube home feed in desktop or mobile, and it will autoplay, right? So with these ads, you can only buy them through a sales representative, and you have to spend quite a bit of money to be able to use them. Now, you basically pay either on a fixed cost per day basis or on a cost per 1,000 impressions basis. So this is purely on a reservation system through a Google rep, and there's some pretty big minimum spends there. So again, this is probably something you won't use. Okay, now that we've talked about the different ad formats and how you charge for them and how it all works, let's talk about practical ways to reduce your ad cost. So there are a few specific things you can do to reduce your ad costs. Number one is you can test more audiences, right? So you can test more targeting options. And what this does is if you're able to test more targeting options, you'll find cheaper ones. So what we typically find is there's some broader targeting options that can typically get cheaper costs. So it usually takes us at our agency 5 to 10 audiences to find a couple of good audiences, right? Like usually we'll test 10 audiences and find 2 good ones. So that's a fact of life. You got to test and go through different audiences to find the ones that work the best. Now, some audience types that are pretty cheap but still provide really effective results and usually are kind of the sweet spot between targeted but still cheap are custom affinity and custom intent. So custom affinity is basically based on kind of like you can enter a website URL or even an app, and Google will try to find people that it thinks are similar to people who use that website or app. In-market ROI is also another great one. That's basically people that Google think is interested in certain topics and buying certain things. So it's basically like, for example, if you have an in-market ROI audience for shoes, those are people Google thinks want to buy shoes. And then topic audiences also can be decent for basically being able to find audiences that are cheap but somewhat targeted, because it's basically based on the video that they're watching, right? So topics are basically big, broad categories of videos that people kind of are watching on YouTube. So an example would be a fitness topic. So that could have tens of thousands of videos in there, right? But basically it allows you to kind of be a little bit narrower while still, maintaining a lot of scale and broadness. Now, the second way to reduce your ad costs is to increase your click-through rate so you get cheaper clicks. So this usually means making better video ads and following a formula like the Linx video formula, which is our formula, and I'll make sure there's a link to that up there at the end of the video as well. Now, with any kind of video ad that you have, you want to make sure you have verbal call to action, so you're telling them exactly what to do in the ad. So you want to have arrows that basically say go click here, and then you want to tell them exactly what they need to do on the landing page. So you may want to tell them, hey, go click on the link below and then go purchase your product today, right? So that's one way to do it. Now, it's really important to test both maximize conversions and target CPA bidding types, as those can also get you cheaper clicks. A lot of people, they make a mistake of using just cost per view bidding, and I don't recommend that. That's how you get really low click-through rates, and that means you get very high costs. So just to clarify, if you guys don't know, when I mean click-through rates, it's what percentage of people actually click on a video, right, when they're watching an ad. Now, you want to aim for a click-through rate of at least 1%, but 1.5 to 2.2, 2.3% is ideal. Our best clients have click-through rates around 2%, and that's where you get some really amazing results. Now, I hope that video was enjoyable and useful. If you want to watch a video on how to script high converting video ads that get high click-through rates, click the link on the side up and go watch that video. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.